Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Tony Fratto, managing director at Hamilton Place Strategies, to discuss some of the key issues Americans are facing as we head into the final stretch of the U.S. national election. Tony, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks for having me. Great to be back.
And Tony, we have so much to unwrap. I mean, you're no stranger to DC politics, having served under the Bush administration. Can you recall a time in your career when the backdrop has been as contentious and as chaotic as it is? It's just so hard to wrap your head around what's happening.
No, I really can't. I mean, there are so many things going on at once. I mean, some of them are policy. Obviously, the election, presidential elections always dominate. This one in particular, and within the context of a very dynamic COVID environment as well. So you have the health crisis, which seems to be worsening, economic pressure, the election. And I joked yesterday that I was sitting around trying to consume all this stuff and pay attention to it and dive deeper into it. And by the way, a hurricane was hitting the coast, right? It's like a sort of an afterthought that this major weather event, which usually dominates our time, was happening in this context. So yeah, there's a lot to work through. It is very contentious, and I think all of us are waiting for to get through Tuesday at least. We know that there's another chapter after that, but getting through Tuesday will be good.
Yeah, and I think that's really what the concern is here. Regardless if it's a Biden win or a blue wave possibility, what that transition of power is going to look like, it really is quite challenging because it's a bit unprecedented. I know we've been through this once before with an election contested, but it's not even just between the politicians, it's what's happening socially as well. And I think that's a scenario that's keeping everyone up at night.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of stress for everyone. I mean, I'll tell you, I was on the ground I was in Florida during the 38 days of the contested 2000 election, and was very involved in that effort. That was one state. We have the potential in this environment because of the mail-in ballots, because of the very different rules for when you can begin counting and what kinds of ballots will be allowed to be counted and won't be allowed to be counted. So that's adding to a lot of volatility, a lot of questions. I speak to investors quite a bit, and this is their biggest concern is not just who's going to win the election, but when will we know when someone has won the election, and what if we are going through a period where there isn't just one contested state and court challenges, but multiples at the same time. So, a lot of us are hoping, and that whatever happens on Tuesday, that it's a clear-cut decision, and that we minimize that type of confusion, not just in the minds of voters. Like, we've been dealing with this for quite a bit, and everyone's pretty stressed about it. But we can't forget that our adversaries around the world tend to take advantage of confusion and those periods in the United States. So we want to make sure that we take great care with that and take it seriously and get it done as credibly and as quickly as possible, because that adds risk for everyone.
Now, if we go back to COVID-19 for a moment, and if we were to have a transition of power, is there anything immediate that would happen once Biden were to take the White House in January? Is it too medically late to control this until a vaccine is available at scale? I don't understand why we don't have some sort of manufacturing strategy in place that, once this is approved, boom, we can manufacture like wartime, because we need to have this available en masse. That's the issue.
It is very troubling right now. I mean, even of course, we're waiting for the tests on vaccines. We have confusion among people getting different messages as to whether the preventive things that they should be doing, wearing masks, distancing, having indoor gatherings, those kinds of things, and that's very unfortunate. There's an enormous communications challenge that I think is leading to some of the increased infections that we're seeing. Vaccines we're still waiting for, and it's going to be some time before we, get the clarity on the tests and then the availability and manufacturing of them. I think what's really disappointing in this moment is, some of the therapeutic drugs, the drugs that helped President Trump when he acquired the virus, the things that helped him recover so speedily are not mass available. Regeneron is, the drugs made by Regeneron are not broadly available right now and will not be for some time. And so to be going into this period in the fall that has been predicted by every epidemiologist every day, it seems, for the past 6 months, who told us that as soon as we start going indoors and breathing air indoors altogether again, that we're going to see significant spikes. That's exactly what we're seeing, and still we're not in a position to have even the therapeutic drugs to help people survive through that period. Now, fortunately, the medical community, doctors and hospitals, have learned a lot about how to treat people. And so we're seeing a greater success rate even when they don't have access to these drugs. So greater success rate in when people get to the hospital, that they emerge alive and not get immediately put on ventilators and things like that. So that's a positive, but we're nowhere near where we should be. The cases and hospitalizations should be down. The therapeutics available should be way up. And we should be putting ourselves we should be practicing the kinds of things that keep us healthy and safe a little bit better. And we could just keep hoping that people will get the message of that before this gets much worse.
Yeah, I would think those practices are going to be in place for quite some time too, even once we get the vaccine, because it's going to take time for it to go through population.
Yeah, Jill, this is such an important point. We're talking to our clients about this all the time. That like we all have in our minds, and we all want to be positive about this, but this idea that there will be a vaccine and that will solve this for us, and we'll get to the after period of COVID. And I think people should temper their expectations on that a little bit. There may be multiple vaccines. There'll be vaccines of varying degrees of effectiveness. They will not be immediately available for everyone. Even when we have them, we don't know whether there will be further development in COVID itself, as that flus change every year, and we get a different flu. We may have a different COVID SARS virus every year also. So we may be dealing with this for a much longer time, and we need to think about that. That's why I think the practices are so important. Those are still the things that are going to keep us mostly safe, and we don't want people to shut themselves in. We want them to go out and as safely as possible be able to do the things in life, like go to school and work and go into shops and all the things that we like to do. We have to get disciplined about doing them safely, whether we have the vaccine or not.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like we know the very famous expression, "It's the economy, stupid." It's almost like, wear the mask.
Wear the mask.
Works,
it's the COVID. It's the COVID stupid. Yeah, I mean,
right.
like some people have been saying this over and over again. Like there is no curing the economy. We had the bounce back numbers on GDP today for the previous quarter, and that was we're certainly welcome to see. It met the expectations of what we hope to see, but the levels are still significantly below where we were and where we ought to be at this point in the business cycle, had we not had this hit. So there's still a lot of economic damage out there. You asked about what happens, maybe after the election, what it changes. Hopefully we get some more clarity. If we get some clarity in the political world, we may be able to get these guys to come together on another spending plan that we really need. This economy needs it. We have people who their unemployment insurance is going to be running out. They have a diminished bonus from what we saw in this in that bounce back quarter. We have lots of businesses that are not able to operate at anywhere near break even capacity. So we're either going to let these companies go out of business, or we're going to have to try to find some ways to support them. Schools, hospitals, like all of these things need support, and the political establishment should have had these things taken care of months ago. They haven't, and maybe an election environment wasn't the best time to try to get this stuff done. But let's get through this election and see if we can get it done as quickly as possible, because there's certainly a need for it out there.
Yeah, and Tony, those are all great points that you brought up, and this is what concerns me. And I don't want to sound overly negative. Obviously the stock market is very divorced from what's happening to
Mhm.
real people and in the economy. And it's great. Yeah, we'll get a stimulus in January, or whatever the case may be. The people that need it the most don't have the luxury of that time. And my other concern is, as you mentioned, these businesses that will eventually, they just can't operate anymore. As companies look to right size, as they understand how to work in a virtual environment, or if they've had supply chain disruptions, they're going to have to figure out what their workforce looks like as well. And my concern is that the employment data, it's just so hard to have some visibility. And I think
Yeah.
we're still in for a rocky ride here.
I think so too. I think it's going to be stuck. Look, people, these people have been stuck, and we hear people in the administration and others point to what equity markets are doing, and Nasdaq, and we're always we're interested in what the publicly traded companies are doing, but we must remember that the publicly traded companies are in a different place than a lot of these non-publicly traded companies out there that are much, a lot of them are much smaller. They have a much more difficult time accessing capital, and they're suffering through this period. And some of them are going to be able to find ways to cut costs and make it through. A lot of them already haven't and won't. And so we have to be cognizant of that we may be creating some long-term damage by waiting. I think we are. I think we are creating some long-term damage. It's going to make the recovery that much longer, and that road ahead of us is going to still be very challenging. Again, like it all comes back to COVID. I think about, even with my business, like, when do we tell our employees it's safe to come back? And do I need to require that all of my employees get the vaccine? Do I have to be that intrusive with their health decisions, and those kinds of things? What does what do sports stadiums say? You need to prove that you've gotten the vaccine before you can buy a ticket to our event. There are really big cultural questions that we have to deal with that are going to make this next period very, very difficult for a lot of firms. So they need to anticipate this and go with eyes wide open and try to pre-think a lot of these decisions and try to determine the best way to deal with them. But I think you're right. I think we have a rocky road ahead of us.
And Tony, you mentioned NASDAQ before, and that reminds me of the social media hearings we heard yesterday. Obviously, those are NASDAQ listed companies. That was some interesting theater for sure. Do you
Interesting is
think
good
that,
euphemism for it.
do you think it was more political theater, or there is potential for structural model shifts within social media companies?
I think, and I should say up front that we work with a lot of the social media companies, and including some that were participating yesterday. So look, I think there was a lot of political theater there. I don't think there's any question about it. And it's a question of what do what do we do with 230, with the laws that allow, or that relieve these platforms from liability. Um, Everybody has a reason to complain about what happens on social platforms. It's like they happen to be a mirror of the world in which we live in, and we all have things to complain about. I haven't yet seen really good solutions. Whatever the wording is of 230, if you were going to amend it in ways that would make everybody happy, I haven't seen that magic brew of of words that get you there, where both sides, whether you're on the left or the right, or you're you want these companies to run their own business without regulation, or you want them heavily regulated, whatever it is. I haven't seen the mix of words yet that would make that would gain political consensus. Yesterday, I thought, was an opportunity for Ted Cruz and some others to let off steam in this campaign season. I think we need to get past the campaign. My sense, and again, we work with these companies. My sense is the companies are trying to do the right thing. They're trying to walk the line between being responsible with the content on their sites, and but also to allow as much freedom of expression as you can within that. And that's a, that's a big and complicated job. We talk, if you think about broadcast television, the old George Carlin bit about the 7 dirty words you can't say on TV, right? Well, there's a pretty clear line, right? Say whatever you want, but not these 7 words. That was, you can't do the same thing with social media platforms. They're not built that way. These are not, that we are all the content creators. I may have let a, swear word or two out on my Twitter feed from time to time, but like I said, they're reflections of real people in real life, and we have to account for that. And we don't want to squelch that either. We want people to be able to express themselves, but not in ways that are dangerous or misleading, and leading to bad public outcomes.
Can you only imagine if George Carlin was still with us in this particular election cycle? I was thinking of that. I was thinking of that over the weekend. Just, it would have been pure gold.
Pure gold, for sure. We definitely miss him.
We definitely do. Tony, as always, it is a pleasure catching up with you. Thank you for joining us on Trade Talks.
Same. Thanks, Jill.
You got it. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.